This is Antithesis, your underground academic radio where the focus is on you. For those that are in the thick of it today, we know what you are living through. And for those that chose or were forced onto a different path, we know what it costs. We're here to be your companion and to help you reorient your compass a bit, to help make sense of it all. Thanks for being here. The opinions expressed here are my own and do not reflect those of my employer or any entity professionally affiliated with me. Topics in these podcasts will be familiar to many, if not all, within the academic and scientific communities, within institutions, industries, and employers of all kinds. Some of these topics may be of a highly sensitive nature to certain listeners, particularly those that have experienced or are experiencing them, and could trigger some emotions that are upsetting or distressing. I've created this space to speak openly about these topics with the broader goal of helping individuals cope, adjust, and adapt constructively to the many challenges at hand. With that said, thank you for joining me. Antithesis, Episode 10, Fit. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our 10th episode. Today, I have to start off with a thought that won't be surprising to many of you that have been listening from the start, or for those of you that have tuned in recently. The themes I'm touching on are recurring over and overlap with each other in all of our lives. And there are folks out there that have studied the morsels and minutiae of these themes and topics we've covered thus far, and no doubt those are coming down the road as well. And I'm sure there have been publications and blogs and probably other podcasts that touch on them in one form or another. So to each person out there, whom I will graciously call the experts, that might have gone on in their studies or their work to the deepest depths of human psychology and emotion and institutional design and operations and pitfalls and philosophies of science and life writ large, hats off to you. And I hope if you are tuning in to listen to this, that you feel we're doing some justice that adds on or at least accentuates what you learned and experienced and executed upon. There's no way to assume that any story or set of stories are 100% unique, but there is uniqueness in what we observed, what we experienced, how we responded or didn't. So I'm hopeful that as we proceed down this path and series, that much if not all of what we cover is reflective and constructive, while fully acknowledging that we all have unique experiences, no matter how similar they might seem at first glance. And I am hopeful everyone will understand how crucial it is for me to continue to exemplify deep respect for everyone's trials and everyone's victories. I'm hopeful these stories, thoughts, and messages can be relatable while also appreciating the incredible broad spectrum of diversity of everyone's life and professional experience, the on-ramps and the off-ramps, the highs and the lows. These same feelings apply to those of you listeners that weren't dyed-in-the-wool academics and never wanted to be. Here, you're appreciated, and I hope that even some of these episodes that delve so deeply into the academic realm and are at times edging into the personal realm from my own experiences and stories, that it provides some helpful context, some insight, and truth be told, draws on connections between us all that make academia not a different universe, but merely a human construct that is only slightly a different animal than any other human-born institution, with its own set of control mechanisms. I'm just glad you're here, and I'm hopeful that weaving some current and past events with personal insights and tales from the academic pathway sheds a bit of light on where we've been and some thoughts on where we might think about going when it comes to education and how we feel about it as a nation, and research development and how we feel about it as a nation, etc. In parallel with these thoughts, with this being episode 10, I'd also like to emphasize that it's my hope that I can reach and provide some solidarity with everyone involved in that chain and progression of academia, to no less than express some kinship, but help remind you of the value of the learning you are pursuing. And even keeping it as simple as that, the value of the learning you are pursuing. And folks outside of academia, the same for you too. Sometimes it will be exhilarating, other times it will be exhausting. And I truly hope it's so much more of the former than the latter, even at the risk that I could be an outlier with what I've seen myself and witnessed others experience. And I know that as we continue this progression of topics and episodes, some of them might come well too late to help you from some past event that caused you consternation or some form of a disruption. And maybe they'll merely substantiate a lot of what some of you have seen or experienced firsthand. But as we continue along, some of them might fit the bill perfectly for where you are today, in hopefully at least one form or fashion. But I truly hope that we can help some folks anticipate what lies ahead. And with that, the next topic is an interesting and impactful one. And thinking on it, I guess it's one of those things that I might not have understood very well if I hadn't experienced it myself. But it's a word and concept from the very beginning that can have a major impact on every bit of your life, personal and professional. So for today, those of you that are young, that are tuning in, and those of you that are even younger and have that much longer of a life and career path from which you will need to make some decisions, big and small, we're going to discuss that word fit. And as I just stated, these are the kinds of matters that don't necessarily click until you experience them firsthand, but we'll just aim for preparedness for the less seasoned and share some thoughts I really wish I had conveyed to me clearly and effectively 30 years ago. As I was preparing for this episode, I did a quick search of the phrase fit in the academic world. And sure enough, there were plenty of articles and thoughts and advice. And one of them touched on this idea of job hunts and how especially limiting it can be when applying for faculty positions. Because what's the college and or university? What's the department? What's the topic or topics they want covered by the person they want to hire to fill a role? And are you going to get along with all of these people? But the fact of the matter is, unless you are the top 0.1% of the hundreds and hundreds of applicants, particularly in the sciences, if you want a faculty position, do you really have the opportunity and the choice to say, no, the fit here just doesn't work for me? Practically speaking, no. Either you match up well in their minds, that is, of the search committee and any other influential faculty you're dealing with, or you don't. And it is going to be rare for most people to be able to have that luxury to be able to pick and choose where they want to go. I mean, speaking practically, candidly, especially to our non academic listeners, how often do you think a faculty job applicant has the opportunity to match with their dream university, which likely also corresponds to a location they would want to live? I will boldly state with confidence, rarely, if ever. And let me say it another way. As a faculty job applicant that wants a professorship, you are going to have to go where you match the job and not where the job matches you. And I fully acknowledge that this is real life, not just academia where this rule applies. But the turnover of faculty jobs is so low, so slow. So the number of new openings each year are limited. And then you focus in further on the number of job openings that are even semi-related to what you research, what you study. The picture that this paints is pretty crazy. So on top of it all, you need to love, you have to love, or maybe more accurately be obsessed with this vocation so much that you need to be prepared to move anywhere. For those fortunate enough to get more than one offer, or maybe two or three, then you can be blessed to be able to make some kind of choice. I'll provide the link to the article I found online in the description of the episode. It was authored by Kelly Weinhold nearly 10 years ago now in 2015. It is entitled, quote, "The dreaded fit question comes first," end quote. And she gives some great tips into how you handle that question when it comes up with the faculty you're interviewing with, like every single one of them, probably. What I liked about it is that it alludes to some real overlapping themes here. Nope, you should never ever state how well you fit directly as an answer to a question. You need to find ways to answer these questions in an informed way, more about the approach and practice, and you see such opportunities with the department and faculty. You do this without saying, oh my God, yes, I am a perfect fit. You just don't do that. Because the truth is, if you tie into the fact that you're a perfect fit and how you can evidence that, you try to find ways to demonstrate that by saying, oh, well, I'm interested in this research and these people and the people in this department and all the things and opportunities that are available, etc. But with these thoughts in mind, not ever reaching a terminal state concerning when and where that word fit is going to have such an impact on your professional life. When you reach that faculty position matching situation, you're definitely at a later stage. Let's talk about thinking even earlier, way earlier. When you are a new graduate student, rotations, as we call them for non-academic folks, the rotations through various laboratories with different principal investigators and mentors are common. So you're accepted to graduate school, you go and you show up on campus, and now you're going to be working with different faculty in their laboratories for maybe a month, maybe a bit longer, and you're going to be experiencing different taste of different labs and advisors, probably for the course of a semester. Anyway, happens is way more par for the course than not, because it is as much a tryout for you, for the mentor, as it is for you to try them out. But I will say, it goes both ways at that point, and you as a new graduate student have some control, some real power there. And this is where you need to begin to exact these efforts and controls as best within your ability as possible. When I went to grad school and I had started doing my rotations, I met another graduate student, and it was really interesting because they had chosen a laboratory outright. This person didn't do rotations. They joined the lab, they matched with the professor. This person was immensely passionate about the research that advisor has done, the lab had done. And lo and behold, as weeks and months pass, maybe a bit longer, eventually that individual left that laboratory, joined a different laboratory. So they were very dissatisfied. And I'm not going into details about, the ups and downs and all the different trials and tribulations that person went through. But the fact of the matter was that wasn't a fit for that person. And even if you do rotations, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that fit is going to be long lasting. But to take advantages of thinking about your environment and what you're seeing, and to not just cold read from a website, even if you're reading papers and you're so impressed and really blown away by what a faculty member, a researcher is doing, and you're so hardcore about joining their lab. The only thing we have to say here is don't just do due diligence or researching them online and seeing their papers. Take the opportunities to get a taste for that environment and the people and the students and other supporting staff and what it's actually like. Just because these things look so glimmering and wonderful on the outside absolutely doesn't mean it's the case on the inside. And while this sounds so obvious for many of you, when you're a young student, you're going in and you're a graduate student and you're passionate about some type of research. Maybe it's about HIV, maybe it's about microRNAs, maybe it's about curing some type of disease. Then you're so blinded to anything else and you want to pursue that because that's what all you've wanted to do for so many years once you learned about it. But the fact of the matter is remaining flexible and keeping those opportunities open. And I think that's really what's key here is that word flexibility to what we think about as fit. The same applies for your search for postdoctoral positions. So after you finish your PhD, if individuals want to continue on in academia, then they find an opportunity to not have to take coursework, but they can focus purely on doing laboratory research. And in fact, for a majority of us, because there were so many more opportunities and openings all over the United States and the world, that's where you can maximize every possible opportunity to do your research, per what would make the best fit for you and what you envision for your future. For me, I based it on the fact that I knew I'd need to be incredibly productive relative to what I achieved in graduate school. So I even chose to change into an entirely new experimental system that I focused on. But a few key points that I cannot emphasize enough for principal investigators and labs you're considering for your postdoctoral work. A handful of thoughts. First, how much have they published lately? Second, how much funding have they received lately? Third, how well do they graduate their students from their laboratories? And that means, yes, they're graduate students. How great of mentors are they, both for postdocs and graduate students? What is a track record of those postdocs getting jobs? And especially the type of job you may want. If you want a faculty position and that mentor, principal investigator has never had a faculty member come out of their laboratory, are you going to be the first one? Something really important to consider. Next, do the postdocs under the watch of that advisor, do they win fellowships? And how long are postdocs supported to do research in that lab? What happens if they can't get a fellowship? Can they get financial support to continue that work? Here, I must also confess, no matter how fantastic your background checks and research into any opportunity, including the one you choose, there are always going to be new developments. I guess some of them might be surprises, some of them might be common, but hopefully due diligence helps minimize the occurrence of the former to you. I chose my postdoctoral lab because I was extremely driven by the science, and I kid you not, it was because I felt like I needed to do an experiment a day, literally. So I chose an experimental system that I could work in that would allow me to do experiments more quickly. And I was passionate about the topics of interest for what that principal investigator was studying in the lab, the research that his lab was doing. But I was fortunate, so fortunate to find a community in the lab, but also in the broader department. It really felt like another graduate experience for me. And I actually said that seriously. I'm like, I feel like I'm back in grad school again. And it was amazing. And I would only hope for any young undergraduates or graduate students that are hoping to pursue academia further that you can find that type of environment, both to do great science, but not even just within a laboratory, but within a community where you have a lot of like minded folks. I was fortunate, and it was a message that I heard more than once. After graduate school, if you end up following through with time as a postdoctoral fellow, yes, of course, there are a lot of challenges to be accepted and addressed, but it should be the time where you can embrace and do the best science of your life. And again, for me, I was able to regroup, refresh, relearn, and expand. I'm thankful for the opportunities that I had as a postdoctoral fellow. It really needs to be said that fit is not static, ever. It's a dynamic. Everything changes in every environment, no matter how fixed we'd prefer things to stay at times, especially if things are working.
Note that I did not say comfortable. I said working. So there should be some obvious safety and comfort, and I dare say peace, so you can be your most productive self, right? But the idea of comfort and working, you want to be able to have that environment where you can have that flexibility, that dynamic that operates and helps you operate well. But as I come back full circle to where you make such a big commitment for your career and life, this is also where fit can be a real grinding point for every one of us to simply not blind ourselves to the reality of any situation that presents itself in any job or role that we take that was that good thing that we wanted to foster and grow. I guess what I mean by that is fit a dynamic and hence we need to maintain our own dynamic and constant state of evaluation right from the very first moment. When I took my faculty position, upon my interviews, I knew that in the section of that department that there were two major contingents, each of them studying their own model organism. So one big part of that section of the department studied one organism, one big section studied another organism, and there really wasn't anybody in between. And I joined that department and that section doing something completely different, completely interdisciplinary, and I'm going to be talking about that type of topic in future episodes. But the idea of the interdisciplinary work I was doing with both the computational mathematical modeling, which was not a big portion of what I did, but the experimental work, I was really off on an island on my own. And I acknowledged these major differences from the beginning and the stark nature of traditionalism in the department that I was joining. And I will say, in the long run, that really had an impact and it made a lot of challenges because when you join that community and you feel like you can be a fit or you can make yourself fit, that isn't necessarily how it works. And I think how flexible one can be to try to make oneself fit, even having great knowledge in one of those model organisms that faculty and that department you were working on, I could answer questions. I had done research even on that organism before, and it didn't really seem to matter. And no matter what my contributions were to be, it didn't turn out to be the most positive outcome at times. Maybe in the end, it's a simple concept, but the difficulty is that it requires all the different parts to meld well enough for folks to want to work together. And then to do so because, again, after the first day, even the second day isn't the same. Thinking on it, maybe it is just like exercise and staying in shape, especially as you get older, that dynamic of fit and fitness. But you can't have optimal fitness. Hell, you probably can't have any real fitness without flexibility. And maybe that should be the word, the true functional operational surrogate that we must all keep in mind when it comes to first fitting, followed by all the days that follow. I mean, even from the example that I gave. However, the amount of flexibility you can provide isn't infinite. So there is some level of rigidity to the fitness, but it means everybody as a part of that community also needs to be willing to be a bit flexible, especially if they're wanting to take you on as a colleague. So from there, even flexibility has its limits. And as every day passes, I hope we can all keep our senses attuned to our environment, use our better judgments to the situations and scenarios we face, and realize that it isn't fair or even reasonable for anyone to need to contort themselves to fit that impossible shape, that intractable space, in a place where you should be embraced for who you are and what you bring and the good that you do. And with that, thanks so much for joining me today. And I hope you look forward to our next episode that will be released in a week's time. And no matter on which platform you heard today's episode, if you enjoyed it and want to hear more, please subscribe, follow, like, and share. And set your notifications to let you know that the next fresh episode is ready for you to dig in. All of you, keep building up your courage, hang in there, and keep your head up. We'll talk to you again soon. Continuing 30 years of experience with stories in and beyond the academic realm, Antithesis is a podcast that will take these perspectives and philosophies and pull them, along with you, the student, the researcher, the innovator, the educator, into the sunlight. Join us for some firsthand experiences, insights from inside and outside academia, and perspectives that are aimed at redefining the conventions of academia and your training, with the aim of helping you reorient your compass and strengthen you on your journey forward, or to recover and grow from those times past. We'd love to have you follow us and tune in weekly. If you have a topic you'd like discussed or a challenge you are facing you want to share, email us at allsystemsgo@gmail.com. That is ALLSYST3MSGO@gmail.com.